Hey family, hope everybody's having a good day. Just want to, before we get started, just kind of take a minute, check in, kind of what I'm starting to do and kind of what has been shown to me or just kind of put on my spirit is just doing a daily check-in. We all are going through various things in our lives that a lot of times can make us feel like quitting or giving up. So it's always good to kind of take a minute just to see what's going on in our lives and how we're currently feeling. So just take a few seconds here. Be mostly in silence. I'll give some prompts as we kind of go along the way, but it's really just meant as opportunities for us to check in with ourselves. So first one is, how are you feeling right now? So for myself right now, just to kind of give an example, the way that I'm feeling is definitely a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of exhaustion, just with the various things that I've been going through in my personal and professional life. That's really kind of taken a toll on me, and can sometimes struggle a little bit just trying to figure out how to deal with that. So that's something you kind of look at when you're asking yourself, how are you feeling? Is really being honest with yourself and what you're feeling and talking through those emotions that, if you're like me, you've buried down or constantly buried down because you keep telling yourself, oh, I don't have time to think about that. I don't have time to think about that or feel that right now. So this is a moment for yourself just to feel those things that we tell ourselves so many times that we don't have time for, and that we don't give ourselves time for. So the next question would be, why are you feeling that way? And just give it a few minutes just to kind of sit in that and just think to yourself, why are you feeling that way? So just continuing on previously, that you've had a few minutes to kind of think to yourself, and it's not speaking out loud, but just asking those questions in your mind and just seeing what thoughts come forward in that moment. So as I do that, and just to kind of, like I said, leading by example and just sharing some of my experiences, is I've been going through a period in my life to where, we always hear people talking about healing journey, shadow work, doing things to heal yourself and heal your trauma. And that's definitely one thing that I've been giving attention to for the past number of years. And one of the things that I'm currently, I don't say struggling with because I don't want to utilize that word and give it power, but one of the things that I'm working on right now is, out of all the work that I've put in, I've always been the type to keep hammering away at things, never giving myself grace, and just been getting frustrated from the standpoint that with all the work that I have been putting in, that I expected to see bigger changes in my life than what I'm currently experiencing. And the fact that I'm not seeing certain changes that I thought I would have saw by now, it definitely has me a little bit discouraged. And that's why it's good to do these moments of self-reflection, because it gives us an opportunity to talk through those things, being honest and sincere, and as I said earlier, just give ourselves grace. Because as I think about it, and I reflect on it, I really have come a long way from the person that I used to be. And if I'm really being honest with myself, I have seen massive changes in my life. That is a direct reflection of the healing work that I've been doing. And it's you always hear stories about the microwave culture and people's attention spans and the way we look at things. We always want things now and immediately. And I say that's definitely kind of one of the traps that I see myself. And like there again, I don't want to use the word trap because, like I said, I don't want to give that power to the situation. That is not an actual thing. I'm not in a trap. It's just a frame of mind and words that I'm using within myself that's giving validity to a situation that's not true. So the issue that I see right now, I guess, that I'm having is just the mental space and giving myself that grace. One of the things that I have heard in the past that really resonated with me is just with the work that I have been doing and that anybody does, especially if you're a person that's used to burying things down and not focusing on them or not dealing with them as a way of not releasing, we don't really stop and give ourselves, like I said, that grace, that chance to just stop and just look in the mirror and actually see who we are in this current moment. And then just think back who we were 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years ago. Are you that same person? Are you someone different? If you were the person you were 5 years ago still, and you met the person that you are now, would you recognize that person? Would you ever imagine or ever dreamt that you would be the person that you are now? And that's one of the things that I never did, is I constantly looked at myself, or I constantly just put my head down, continued on my meditation, continued to do the reparenting work on my inner child, continued to not fight battles that I would have fought in the past, and just changed a lot in regards to who I am. And I never recognized those changes that I did make within myself because I was always looking for a silver lining that I felt would represent what a truly healed person would have and would obtain. And it's just through that was just doing a disservice to myself and was just adding to that anxiety. So when I go back to my original question I asked earlier, as far as why I'm feeling that way, I would say that's the reason why, and that's what comes to my mind whenever I ask that question, and just kind of sat there in silence. I haven't been giving myself that grace to recognize how far that I've come in my healing journey. As I said, we always, when we go through certain things or certain things happen, we always want things to change and to be over with. We want as much as we would like for it to be. That's not how healing works. It's not from the standpoint of you recognize, hey, I have this blind spot that I need to work on. The simple fact of you recognizing this blind spot is a truly wonderful and amazing thing, but the healing doesn't stop there. Just because you recognize that blind spot, now comes the work that you have to put in to ensure that you get rid of the blind spot, and when that other blind spots that resonates with that pops up, that you recognize it in the moment, so that way it doesn't continue to be a stumbling block for you like it has been in your previous life. So I would say that's why I'm feeling that way. It's just because the way that I was brought up, raised, and taught to deal with emotions was just one that never gave myself grace and never really reflected and dealt with the emotions. So in essence, I'm learning how to deal with the emotions as they come up now, how to have that proper mind state, how to shift that mind state when it starts to go back to that familiar place, that place where Brandon feels comfortable or felt comfortable at one point in time, recognizing that I no longer want to feel comfortable in that space because I recognize the effect that those actions had on my life and how it directly contributed to the unhappiness, and I would even say the depression that I felt once upon a time, and I still, do in part to this day. But the first step with anything is recognizing it, and then once you recognize it, it's just looking at what you're going to do and then putting in that work, so that way you don't stay in that place, you don't continue to reside in that place, because if you're like me, you weren't happy there, and if you're being truly honest with yourself, you don't want to be there. So it's only through that continued work, that continued effort, that we get ourselves out of that place and we push and propel ourselves forward to rebuilding ourselves and becoming born again into the person that we want to be, the person that we know that we can be, because our soul has a yearning for that. So, if anything, right now, just hoping that this message just goes out to anybody else that's kind of going through heavy moments, especially those that are on the healing journey, the healing path, trying to make themselves better, or not trying, but doing the work to make themselves better. It's definitely not an easy job, but if you're anything like me, we've never had it easy. We've always had the tough road to go, but that tough road was for a purpose, because as I keep hearing the recurring theme, they say pressure bursts pipes, but it also makes diamonds. And if you're, like I said, somebody like me, or that's what I'm starting to recognize, that I used to ask myself, why me? I'm such a loving person. I would give anybody the shirt off my back. Why do I have to go through these crazy scenarios or issues to where it seems like they're just unrelenting? They just come one after another. As soon as you get through one and you feel like you can sit back, take a deep breath, finally made it through that, and all of a sudden it just seems like something else just comes down the pipe and just smacks you right upside the head, and you're just like, damn, I just finished dealing with this, can I get a break before I have to start dealing with this next thing? But it's just one after another, after another, after another. And it used to really get me down and really get me depressed to think that, what in the hell did I do in my life that I deserve this? There's so many things, like I said, that I do to help people, to be a sunlight in their lives, to help them out, help encourage them, help them show that there are people out there that really truly care about them, even when I didn't have that feeling in my life where I felt like there was anybody that really cared about me or truly loved me or truly had my back. I never wanted anybody else to feel that way, and I always went out my way to ensure that anytime I observed that in other people to do what I could in their lives to make them feel valued, make them feel loved, and make them feel appreciated. It wasn't until I heard that expression, and I've heard it many times in my life, but as with anything, you can hear something over and over and over again, but it's not until you're at the right place at the right time in your life that you hear something that it finally clicks with you and resonates with you. And that was one thing definitely with me, is that those situations weren't happening to me, they were happening for me. They were shaping me and shaping my character into the person that I needed to be, because there were people who are going to be going through similar situations, either going through them now or going to be going through them at a certain point, and they would need someone to help guide them through that. And looking back through my life and all the ups and downs, the ebbs and flows, and the things that I went through, that's what I see it as now, is life was preparing me for the things that were to come. And with the mind state that I was in, I was viewing it as it was happening to me. Why are these things happening to me? What did I do for these things to happen, to bring these things into my life? Well, sometimes there were actions that I took that was a direct effect of those things happening. I had to ask myself, just like I started this off earlier, why are these things happening to me? In the instances where I took actions that directly affected and caused those things to happen in my life, I had to be honest with myself and ask myself, why did I do those things? What was it about me that made me feel like I needed to do that, or I did those things? And that's really what started my healing journey. Because as we learn, or as you will learn, if you haven't gone through things, or if you haven't recognized yet, there's an old saying that history often repeats itself, or history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. And that's the one thing that I learned, is that life will teach you lessons, and that's what life is all about. People always ask, well, why does God allow suffering? Why does God allow these things to happen? And I used to fall victim to that type of thinking as well. But when you look at it and you really sit back and think, the biggest lessons or the greatest lessons you learned in your life, were there lessons that you learned just by waking up and somebody telling you? Or were those lessons ones that you had to overcome something? Were those lessons that you had to fight? You had to persevere. You had to be determined in order to make it through. I would say those lessons, the greatest lessons in your life that you've had to learn, were ones that you had to fight through. You had to persevere through. You had to give it your all. A lot of times you may have felt like, or not may have, you probably did feel like quitting. You did feel like giving up. But it was just by biting the bullet, as they say, and pushing forward, that you were able to overcome it. And then once you overcome it, how powerful did you feel in that moment? Once you were able to look up and look back and say, damn, I never thought that I would be able to get through it, or I would make it through this. I don't know why. In the moment, you didn't know why you were going through it. But once you made it through and you looked back and you looked in the mirror to see the person that you've become through those challenges, you start to see, yes, there may be certain actions that I took that was a direct cause of those events, but there was something within you that caused you to take the actions that initiated that activity, initiated that obstacle, that hurdle that you had to overcome. And that's what those events are there to teach us, are those behaviors, those emotions, those attitudes within us that keep initiating those events. It's not God that's putting those things in our path, but it's ourselves that are putting those things in our path because of those actions, those attitudes, those behaviors, that lack of emotional intelligence that we have within ourselves. And that's what those events are meant to teach us, is trying to point a big red neon sign to those things as a way to give us something to focus on. And it's not until we actually focus on those things and we take a look at them and we actually do the needed work that's required that we will stop experiencing that particular event in our life. So the last question I'll leave you with is those feelings that you were feeling earlier, those emotions that you were feeling earlier. Is that an emotion or feelings that you've been dealing with your entire life? Or is it something new? If it's something that you've been dealing with your entire life, then take a moment and just sit back and just, like I was saying earlier about history doesn't necessarily repeat itself, but it rhymes. What events have you been going through in your life that have seemed to be repeating? And does it have anything to do with those emotions that you're feeling right now? That anxiety that you're feeling, the depression that you may be feeling? If it does, then just sit with yourself and ask yourself, what is it that I'm doing that's contributing? Remove all of the things, the feelings, the emotions that you have of what other people have done to you or the way other people have made you feel, and just ask yourself, what is it that I'm doing that's contributing to this and that I'm not seeing in this that's contributing to this, or that's a part of the equation? And just sit with yourself in silence. Turn the radio off, turn the TV off, wait until this video finished playing, and then turn it off, and just sit with yourself. Get a piece of paper and basically just write down whatever comes to mind. And then once you're all said and done, just look at what you've written down, look at what you've thought, and make a plan on what you can do to start taking deliberate actions to improving. So one thing I do is I do a daily meditation practice after asking those questions every day to myself. I'll make note of it, and when I do my meditations, I ask myself those questions or a variation of that, and then I see what comes to me during the meditation, and then I put actions behind that activity to improve. So one thing I'm working on right now is reparenting my inner child. We've all had scenarios to where when we were children, things happen to us that we can say, well, our parents didn't necessarily handle it the right way. I remember myself being younger, was dating someone that my parents didn't agree with, and it caused a lot of arguments. And while being older, I can understand why they felt that way. But when I think back and look at it, is thinking about, if I was a parent back in that time and I was parenting my younger self, how would I have handled those situations? So one of the things I'm doing right now is going back through my life and looking at those situations from childhood all the way up even to adulthood that I felt like my parents didn't handle the correct way or had big impacts on my life. And as I meditate, I picture my younger self and I apologize as if I am the parent and saying, hey, I apologize for that situation. I don't think it was handled the right way. And then I go through the conversation with my younger self of how I would handle that situation now. So, like I said, just an example of if the person that I was dating at the time and parents not agreeing with that person or agreeing with that choice, having the conversation with my younger self saying, hey, I don't agree with this, but this is why I don't agree with this, and going through the various steps or going through the various concerns, and not just saying, well, hey, I don't agree with this person, so you can't date them. So everybody, we all have our own situations, our own scenarios. It's not something that you get right the first time, but it's just about going through and just talking to your younger self in those situations that you felt had a big impact on your life, and what can you do as a parent now to your younger self, just to talk to them and let them know that they are cared for, that they are loved, and that they are heard. You'd be surprised how much it would benefit you and how better you feel. So if you didn't take anything from this, the biggest thing is just spending time with yourself and just asking yourself, how am I feeling? How are you feeling? And just taking some time just to see what comes to mind after you ask yourself that question, and then asking yourself, why am I feeling this way? And then taking some time just to see what comes to mind, and then asking yourself, how can I change this feeling that I have? What changes do I need to make in order to alleviate or get rid of this feeling that I'm having? And just sitting with yourself and whatever comes to mind, just taking that and writing it down, and then meditating on it, saying some prayers, taking it to God, the divine spirit, whatever the name is that you use for the Father, for Pops, and just taking it to him, and with yourself, being a co-creator of your own world, your own environment, and you'd be surprised what will come from it. So, but just know that because things have happened in the past, that doesn't define who you are, and that doesn't define your existence in this world. Just know that there are people out there that are just like you, that have gone through similar things, and they are working just like you are to improve your life and to make a better future, not only for yourself, but for future generations that you have a responsibility of either bringing up or that you want to bring into this world, so that way you don't pass on those generations, I don't want to say curses, but those generational cycles that you were born into or you were made part of, and that you were starting to perpetuate, but you recognize. Just be thankful and be grateful every day that you recognize that cycle. You recognize what needed to be done in order to break that cycle, so that way you didn't pass those on to your offspring. So I know that's one thing. I don't have kids yet, but at some point I do want to have children, and that's my goal right now, is doing everything I can in my power to ensure that by the time I do have children, the things that impacted my life, I don't pass them on to my children, because I want to give them as clear a slate as possible, so that way they go forward and not have to spend time healing. I mean, there's always going to be things that we have to heal from. It's never something that we complete and we're completely done. So we're all born into this world with missions and things we need to accomplish, and I just want to give them the best chance of success. So love you guys. Appreciate you spending some time with me. And like I said, never forget to do your daily check-in with yourself. How am I feeling? Why am I feeling this way? And what can I do to help? So any questions you guys have, I'm definitely always here for you. You can always hit me up in the comments, or shoot me some DMs. So we're all going through this together. We're all a big family, and I'm here to help you. So love you guys. Hope you have a good day, and take care.